Hey everybody, Bryan here again, out and about. It's a pretty decent Sunday, a little cloudy. Feels pretty good though. I think we're pushing 70 today. It's supposed to rain in a couple hours, so I thought I'd get out here and take another walk and talk to the best of my ability today. I should really get myself on some allergy medicine because my throat, it's got that sludge thing going on again. I can't really clear it out. So if I have to make some disgusting noises to keep my voice intact, please forgive me. Today I'm at St. Francis, which is a beautiful university here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I like to come out here from time to time to just contemplate, think, and enjoy the sights. It's a beautiful campus. Here's their little clock tower. Goes off every hour. It's very nice. I think I just missed it. I got here a minute ago and it's already past 12. All right, I think I got it. So I'm going to take a trip around the loop here. Goes around the main building. I'll stop to check out the sights for you. Here's the pond. It's a little fountain over there. So I was just out yesterday. I went to Shove Park. Talked about a few things, a little more than I expected. You know how it is. You get on a train of thought, you keep going and going, and before long you have a lot of topics and a lot of things to talk about. Today I don't know if I have a really strong topic to get into, either positively or negatively. I just wanted to get out, move around a bit, see what comes to mind. Maybe I'll be inspired by something here. Now that the path is clear, there's some folks over there. I'm going to start doing my walk. Now, yesterday I'd mentioned there are these birds. I call them swallows. I'm pretty sure that's what they are. They like to dive bomb when you get close to their nests. I had mentioned a bridge that I've been to that they like to congregate underneath and build their nests under as well. This up here, this little tiny bridge ahead of me, this is where they like to be. And I've been dive bombed here plenty of times. Maybe it'll happen today. It'll be kind of fun. Yeah, they're zooming around right now. I think they see me. Yep. So I'm gonna make it over this bridge and go over here to the little island. Beautiful. Sometimes I'll come over here, cross that little bridge, and sit at the bench. Bring a book, or just sit and think. I don't think I caught it, but a few birds just flew under this bridge here. Huh. Got a couple of ducks over there. Oh, they went away. So I was thinking about kind of my early days with education, not as a student, but leaving my prior job, getting a degree in psychology, turning my life upside down to pursue a different interest. And some of the stories I had from back then, maybe this would be a good time to kind of recount that. Because this year, as I've mentioned before, this has been really special for me. It's been a great 5th grade class across the board. I made some really good connections. Students I think I'll be thinking about every day. Hoping they're doing okay. And one in particular who inspired this entire series. I think she's going to have as you might call, a rent-free, seat in my heart. It's funny how those things happen. But when I first got into education, I wasn't exactly sure what to do, if I wanted to pursue teaching, if I wanted to do something else, counseling, or something even more specialized like school psychology or educational psychology. I just knew I wanted to work with kids, and that was born of kind of a chance encounter I had with some folks my wife knew, and I don't remember if I talked about this, so I don't want to retread things, but one brief hour with a little girl at a restaurant kind of changed my view for myself and set me forth on a different path. It's interesting how life works in that way. You have a sense of what you like to do. You kind of figure yourself out. You might not be in the right place, but you know who you are. And it just takes one catalyst, one moment to give yourself a new path, a new journey to follow. And that's what happened for me. When I started out in education, I began as a substitute assistant, which it is exactly as it sounds. I would get calls early in the morning, say, hey, you got to be at such and such elementary school today. You're covering someone in special ed. It's like, okay. Or, hey, they need a classroom assistant for a few days because they're out for medical leave or something. It's like, okay. It was interesting because I could see how things operated in different schools. Not being in that industry, I knew just intuitively that all schools were going to operate a little differently. It's going to be a different mode, different atmosphere, environment, however you want to parse that. And that's what I got. I got a nice wide arrangement of how things were done, the basic idea of working in schools, because up to that point I only knew them from the vantage point of being a student. Now, being well removed from that, last time I was in a classroom as a student was 1995. I figured things would be different, and they really were. I'm going to pause here for a second. This building is the Bass Mansion. Behind me is Bass Road, and if I turn around slowly as to not disorient you, this road becomes Spring Street, and down there on Spring Street there's some neat little stopping points. If I want to get a bite or something, I can walk down there if I want to. It's a little bit of a haul, but not too bad. And there are actually a few schools, and I think there's 3 schools down here that I have worked in at some point through my time as a substitute. I've been all over the place, and I did that for a full year. And then I was able to find myself working as a substitute in one of the schools I used to go to as a student. So to go back there, it was surreal. You know, kind of stepping into a time portal, but having a much bigger body, because I was always the smallest kid, smallest, shyest, that whole thing. To come back with more confidence, a little more stature and esteem was quite different. It was good though. I found some old yearbooks in the basement of the school, and I saw myself when I was in I think it was 2nd grade, 1st grade, somewhere around there, which is nice. And I ended up working there as the permanent school assistant after my time was done as a sub. I asked to plant myself there, and they let me. It's very nice. The district that I work for I'm very supportive of. We can talk all day about the problems of public education, but the district itself, I think, tries very hard. We have a number of districts here, big ones, small ones, and I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. And it's hard for me to be too critical of that, because I know they're trying their best, and they're working with, in some cases, busted materials, busted tools, which is not their fault. It's just the nature of the beast. So when I became a full-fledged school assistant, I was placed in kindergarten, which is kind of weird because, I'm being a guy with smaller kids, it's an unusual combo. But they entrusted in me, and I appreciated them for that. The teacher I worked with, very kind. She was just a little older than I was. I could not imagine any other job that was befitting of her than that. Supremely sweet, very kind to me, kept me in the loop, kept me a part of the process, gave me good feedback when I needed it, and the kids were great. They really connected with her, and as did I. Kids were wonderful. I still have a class photo I was given by the teacher. It's kind of a remembrance, because she presumed that I'd be moving on to different classes and such, which I eventually did. Once they realized what my value actually was, they started putting me with older and older kids every year. The sad thing, though, is that when I had moved on, the teacher had passed away. She had complications with, I think it was her heart, and succumbed to that problem. And the school did a nice job of commemorating her and memorializing her permanently. They planted a tree and put a plaque. I think it was not in front of the building, it was on the side of the building. And they all had a big kind of a get-together ceremony, you might say, or an assembly out in the yard to commemorate it. It was tough. It was tough for myself, but to watch the kids, that I can't really put into words exactly what that felt like. The best I can put it is to watch mass sadness in little innocent kids. It's heart-wrenching, that's what it is. But they got through it and moved on with their lives. I stayed at that school for about 4 years, inching my way up, eventually first grade, third grade, and fifth grade. Skipped fourth for some reason. I never worked with fourth that much. And during that time at the school, I was working on my degree. And unfortunately, in that role, you don't get paid much. There's a lot of responsibility in the subtle sense, because there are a lot of, minds that you're reshaping and forming and instilling values and certain moral platforms for. The pay doesn't really describe what the value of that person is, and albeit not nearly as high as the teacher, who they run the show, but I'm peripheral. I'm there too. It just didn't pay much, and unfortunately for me, when I had finally graduated, that's when the student loans started kicking in. It's like, okay, we've been giving you this money, now it's time to pay us back. And that job could not cut the mustard, so I had to leave. Started doing different things, different jobs and everything. once finances started to get a little easier for us, I eventually went back to the schools. I did try teaching. Ninth grade algebra. That was an experience that I think left a permanent scar on me. Not because of the kids per se. They were a bit rough. Classrooms of 28 to 32. Teaching a concept that is basically foreign to them, and trying to make them enjoy it. That's tough. And I think we understate that aspect of teaching. It's getting people to not only understand a concept, but to appreciate it enough to maybe even like it. I had trouble with the leadership. I had trouble with management. I felt that they were not really too terribly helpful to new teachers like myself, who had a lot of questions. We had basic expectations for students, and it just wasn't working for me. The school I worked at, if I remember right, it was said that the capacity was supposed to be about 650, 700 students, and they had ballooned over 1,000 because they're inner city school, a lot of neighborhoods nearby, not a lot of high schools close to them. So if you treat that high school as being at the center of the kind of the whirlpool, where all the water swirls around and eventually reaches that eye, and all the neighborhoods around the eye just kind of get siphoned into that hole, yanked inside. That's kind of what we experienced. I didn't make great connections with the students, and I think it's because my approach was very different. And it took me a while to understand what teachers really have to balance in their jobs. The curriculum is one thing, but it satisfies their bosses, satisfy the state, satisfy the district, satisfy the parents in some cases. That's a lot for them to take care of. And then somewhere along the way, you gotta make those connections with students. And you'll have to forgive me if I did not talk about this. But there's a story I have from my 9th grade teaching year that it's going to stay with me forever. There was a girl. She didn't say much. She sat along basically the side of the room in one of my classes. She listened intently. She tried her best, but she kind of just hung out. Wasn't really putting herself out there to ask questions or raise her hand to answer questions or to show that she understood the concepts I was putting out there for her. But one day, she came up to me and said, "Hey, would it be okay if I came in early to work with you on this algebra?" Excuse me. And I said, "Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll be here. Got plenty of time. Come on in. We'll knock some of this stuff out." So she did. She was inconsistent with it. She didn't do it every day, but she would come by every once in a while and we'd work on things. And eventually she asked if he could bring a friend, because she had a friend of hers in one of the rooms. I was like, "Sure." He was also a student of mine as well. So they came in and worked a little bit. And this other girl, she wouldn't come anymore. She would just kind of vanish. I didn't question the first girl about it. I just kind of let it go. It's their business. Maybe they had a falling out. I don't know. Well, one day, I thought everything was fine. She was doing a lot better. She seemed a little more enthusiastic, which if you think about it, if you understand what you're doing, you're going to be more enthusiastic. I'm going to pause right here for a second to talk about this. This is a kind of a nature area for the school. These are weeds, of course, but they don't want you to cut them down. They're protecting the wild growth here. And if you follow this around, what's kind of cool, don't mow or spray. That's good. Back in the brush behind that sign, they have beehives, which is really cool. So they take care of bees and they tend to the hive. I've never watched them actually work on the bees, but I think that'd be really fascinating. I think bees are incredible creatures. Very, very deserving of care and to be taken care of because of their impact on our environment. Maybe someday I'll go back there and arrange it to where I can see what's going on. But this path here goes back to where I started, but I'm not going to go that way. I want to go back this way towards more of the athletic things. I'm only at 20 minutes right now in this video. I'm going to fill it out a little more. So the student was doing a lot better. She seemed more enthusiastic and everything. But one day, she was there, didn't really say much, didn't think much of it, but when the bell had rung and the students were leaving, she dropped a note on my podium where my laptop was, because I was taught from the podium. And when all the kids left, I read it. It had my name on it. I read it. She said, thank you for taking the time to work with me, to teach me the math that I had previously hated, but you helped me appreciate it more. I even like it a little more than I did before. And she ended with, keep being you. And she signed her name at the bottom. That was it. If I had known what that letter actually meant, I would have spent time to find her that day to thank her personally. But I didn't. I thought I would see her the next day, and I'd just tell her then. Well, the next day came around, and she wasn't there. It's like, I wonder what's wrong. Maybe she had to go on a trip or something. I don't know. Well, I eventually figured out that she was no longer in the school. And she had left. What happened to her, I don't know. What that letter represented was a goodbye. A simple thank you and a goodbye without saying goodbye. And I've still got that letter. I keep it with me in my wallet. And it's there as a reminder of what impact means. It's very clear you don't get into education if you don't first care about those students. If you don't care about the process, if you don't care about schools, if you don't care about education, you should not be in that business. I ticked all those boxes. I did care, and I still do. Train tracks over there. And it taught me something about impact, that it may not be immediately apparent who it is you're affecting. Kids of all ages, the little ones in kindergarten, first grade, all the way up to high school age. They all have different processes for handling stress and enthusiasm and dedication, motivation, and effort and care. They all have different ways of doing that. They're not always uniform. And it reminded me that when I think that I'm having no effect, no impact at all on these students' lives, there just might be that one person who will come out of nowhere to tell you, hey, you might want to rethink that. And I think that's what she was. She was a reminder that even if something isn't working for me, even if I maybe feel a little awkward, like I'm just not connecting as well as I should be with the students, there could be one. Don't give up. Be patient. Give it time. And that happened, I think it was about 2021. And she was supposed to graduate in 2025. Presuming she's still around somewhere. I tried to reach out, find her. No such luck. To me, it's a part of my career history that needs closure. I carry her letter as a reminder, as something special for me, but I never gave her thanks. I never explored what she was trying to tell me, because it could be deeper than what I think. I don't know. And I wonder if I'll ever know. There are times when I have students, teaching aside, just being in the classroom, being a caring adult in the classroom. There are times when students tell me things that are privileged information. And there are reasons why they do that. And we can explore those all day. But there's also the response. And I believe I've talked about the students I work with now, how they give me information, and I have to consider what I do with it. Do I share it with, counselors, therapists, case managers, and the like? Or do I keep it close to myself and just let the student determine kind of my actions with that information? Because what I do is I treat it first as, hey, I value you as a trusted adult. I'm going to tell you this because it gives me some sort of satisfaction or relieves stress. And that's the first thing I do. Then I have to assess, is this something that is going to be detrimental to this student's life if I don't do something about it? That's the tough part. I have to make a judgment call. In most cases, I spend a lot of time before I say something. Now, there is one person I work with right now. She's a case manager. She's very nice. She and I see things very similarly as it concerns the state of the school, public education, role as special education, or a mediator between student and teacher or student and parent. She gets it, and I can talk to her about those things. And she doesn't talk as if she's reading from the rule book. I've worked with coaches who, goodness, I can't tell if I'm getting a legitimate answer out of them or they're just reciting page 17 of the positive behavioral support rule book. And that can get irritating very quick. So I want to talk to real people, not a book. But she's easy to talk to, and I think we see things very similarly. And some of these kids, I'm told things that I don't know if it's common knowledge. I don't know if this is privileged information or it's just common knowledge coming out. And sometimes it is common. Sometimes I can hear from other teachers or other staff members that, this kid is dealing with this thing at home. So tread lightly, be careful what you say because of these things and that thing. It's almost like it's part of their mystique, these kids' mystiques. They carry their home lives with them. And it just seems to be out there. It's like, yep, this is my problem. Love me or hate me, that sort of thing. And there's some who, they don't show a lot of those sort of behaviors that get you wondering. Then all of a sudden they approach you with something. It's like, wow, you really deal with that every day? And it tells me those kids have some level of defense, some coping mechanism that they can work through and utilize in those times. And for me to hear the negative things, that's like saying, hey, I value you as a part of my life. I want you to know this about me. That's really special, and I don't like to take that for granted. And I don't. There's a softball field. I like to watch them play sometime. But what's this? Yep, poor book. Let it dry, I guess. You never know what you might find out here. Or anywhere. I mean, even if you think about what I'm talking about, that's kind of the case all the time, right? You never know what you might find. You never know what you might hear. What do you do with that information? For example, that book, sopping wet, I'm going to leave it there to dry. Maybe the owner will come back for it. Maybe someone else will find it, take it to lost and found. Problem solved. But what do I do with information that is privileged? That's tough. Not sure if there's a clear-cut right answer. I think some things are not black and white. You know, if you sense that there's abuse going on, neglect, yeah, see something or hear something, you say something. It's not too tough. There's certain things that it's like, man, it is towing the line. I don't know. If you've been in that situation, maybe you can shed some light on it. What do? Do you immediately share everything you hear? Or do you calculate first? Do you ruminate? Do you run through all the scenarios that could come from sharing this with other people? So far, I've not been in a situation that I've made a bad decision about. I've heard things and shared certain things and then kept other things private between the student and myself. Doesn't appear to be anything negative to come from that, so I think I'm doing pretty well. I don't know. I think this is part of that role. When you're working with young lives, still trying to figure out the world, you're going to hear some things. Their gift of youth versus your gift of experience. That's what's in balance. So what else is going on? I talked about working in kindergarten my very first year. Eventually, I moved into first grade. And this is going to be, this is probably going to take the rest of this video. I'm at 34 minutes right now. First grade, the teacher I was with did not like me at all. I think she was very used to having a compliant, malleable female assistant, one that she could just direct around and not ask questions or be inquisitive about stuff. Because once I started asking questions and opening my mouth and asking why do we do it this way, she would get this pained look on her face, like I was completely shattering her system for doing stuff. And looking back, yeah, I may have been a little excessively inquisitive, but it was coming from the right place. I wanted to figure out this world. It was still relatively new to me. still wet behind the ears, a rookie, so to speak, entering my sophomore year. And I just want to figure things out. Remember, teachers are different. Classrooms are different. The mode, the environment, the atmosphere. But she didn't like that, and she let it be very well known. So it was awkward being in that room. However, I think I was very fortunate in that one of the students, who I will call my general name is Susie. Let's go Susie. There's a girl named Susie. Let's go Susie. She was a very sweet kid. A lot of troubles, though. Very hard for her to regulate her own emotions. So she was prone to crying, throwing certain fits, kind of getting in over her head with her emotions, where if she starts to cry, she goes further and further, where it's harder and harder to return from that, to get back to the balance. Well, I worked with her, and for some reason she was someone I felt drawn to. Like, there was something about her I wanted to really help. I wanted to reverse those pains. So I would spend a little extra time working with her. I would sit with her when we were on the carpet. I would check on her frequently when we were working on something at the tables and the desks. And over time, the interactions we had would change. It'd be very, very warm, very positive. Susie would want to have me close by. And I learned something about, boundaries. Because here's the thing, they don't really teach you these things when you get into this role. They kind of give you a basic outline, and then they say, just go for it, and you're going to learn stuff on the fly. And that was very true. There was a time when we had a substitute in the room, and all the kids were sitting on the carpet, and I sat down there too, because I thought modeling was a good part of teaching. So I sat down, and Susie sits next to me, and she wraps her arm around my left arm. And I kind of froze, because part of me was like, okay, this is your chance to find comfort and contentment so that you can avoid a blow up. But then there's another part of me that says, wait a minute, that's a bit too close. You shouldn't be doing that. So I froze. You know how it is. Freeze, fight, fight or flight, freeze, those three things. I was in the freeze. And I looked at the substitute. She looked at me, and we're kind of just looking at each other. It's like, ooh, what do I do? So what I did was, I said, oh, Susie, I got to get up for a second. So I got up. I walked to the other side of the room. I did something. I just pretended like I was busy. And I came back, and I sat at a chair nearby. I thought that was a good compromise in that moment. But it showed me that she was very invested in having me nearby. And that started a ball rolling for us. I began to look at her as someone who desperately needed that sort of attention. Now, being a male, that's a blessing and a curse. A blessing in the sense that I can impart fatherly sort of vibes to the kids, not treat them as my children, but to model a certain level of security and stability in their educational life. But a curse in that if I'm a good guy and those kids have daddy issues, they're probably going to flock to me. And I think that was the case with Susie. So months went on, and we would, do our thing. We'd get close. I would answer her calls. I would respond when she was feeling down and crying and all those things. Man, there's nobody over here. There's only two cars over here. I think I'm going to do another walk around the front of the building here. So time went on, and what I had learned was that this teacher, the one I had trouble with, just did not like Susie at all. She found her to be a nuisance, a pain in the backside, and very difficult to keep under control. And I thought I was doing a good job of helping the teacher out. And I still hold that content. But since this teacher didn't like me, I don't think she wanted to give me the credit for that. So there was a point when Susie had a kind of a meltdown in the classroom. She ran to the coat room, hid under some coats, and I went in there to kind of console her to see what was going on, because I felt a soft approach would work for Susie. Well, when I was doing that, the teacher came in and started yelling at her, basically contradicting every good-hearted thing I was trying to do for this child. And I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. I just, again, froze because I'm conflicted. Do I follow the teacher's demand, or do I continue doing what I think is necessary? And that's giving her a soft hand. You know, the whole giving her a hand up out of that chaos. And it was in that moment where I decided, do you know what? I don't like this teacher. I don't trust her. I'm going to do things my way with this child, Susie. I keep wanting to say her real name, but I don't want to do that. Susie. So, because of the way I communicate, I decided to write a letter. What I had known up to that point was that Susie had a younger brother, who I'll call Timmy, and who lived with her mom. I knew that from talking with other people. So, if that were the case, and there's no dad in the house, what this might be a case of is Susie having father issues and not getting that stability in her home because there's probably chaos going on. So I decided to reach out to Mom. I wrote a letter to her. I put it in an envelope, and I wrote Susie's name on the envelope, and I told Susie, hey, this is for your mom. Would you give it to her, please? She goes, yes. And that's what she did. In the letter, I explained what has been going on with her daughter. I explained what I had been doing to kind of ease the situation, some of the strategies I was using, tactics, responses. I wanted to make sure that Mom understood that I am positive towards her daughter. She's not a nuisance and I'm just dealing with her. No, I like the child quite a bit. And I think it's reciprocated. I think she had a particular level of value in me. And I gave her my contact. Say, if you need to contact me, here's my email, which, you know, it was public record because I'm a school staff member. And that was it. What was astounding, and this is something I'll never forget, the next day, Susie comes over and says, hey, this is from my mom. She hands me this note, folded up in like 6, 7, 8 different ways. And I read it, and the mom says, thank you so much for your letter. No one at that school has been supportive of my daughter, and you have. I really appreciate that. That is going to stick with me for a long time. And I'll explain why here in a bit. But to finish her letter, she basically said that, she, has concerns about Susie, and what I've been doing has been helpful. Because she notices things at home that have been different for her, and she attributes that to what I had been saying in the letter. So she's kind of putting these things together. And she gave me her email address in case I wanted to talk to her directly, which I did. So to finish out that school year, I had a really good email conversation with Mom about various things. Just back and forth. nearly every day, I learned about Susie's background, about Susie's dad, who was no longer in the picture. I learned about her mom, who was trying to balance having 2 kids in the house and working a full-time job to keep things afloat. And during that time, I would give, what I thought was, special care to that kid who needed someone. All under the idea that I was breaking major rules at that school. And I admit it, I was. I'm not supposed to be contacting parents. I'm not supposed to be giving preferential treatment, which I wasn't. I was giving special treatment. I didn't prefer her to anyone else. It was just that when it was with her, I changed the game a bit. I looked at her as being a culmination of needs. And that's what I wanted to give her. I wanted to give her what she needed, not just what gets her through the day. If she needed a warm hand, I would give it to her. If she needed someone to talk to and explain the best she could what she's feeling, I want to be that listening ear for her. So we continued month after month. And then there was a turning point. And this is where, a big challenge to me happened. It's a big checkpoint, you might say. There was basically like a student event where the kids got together at a different school and they performed on stage. They sang and they danced. It was like a program, basically. And I hadn't planned on going to it, but little Susie told me that she would be there and she'd be singing. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make the effort. I'm going to go. I watched it. I had a good time. Kids are always fun. And I'm going to go this way. And I've actually still got the DVD from this. Her on the stage, dancing and singing. Very cute. Having the time of her life. So after this program, all the parents, the staff, some of the kids were out in the main hallway. We were kind of meeting and greeting, catching up and everything. And I'm standing there. And here comes little Susie running towards me. I said, "Oh, you did a nice job out there." She goes, "Yeah, did I?" "Yep, you did." And we're just standing there. And she gives me a little hug, which is, normal for her. And I'm standing there with her, and then up rolls Mom with a stroller, and Susie's little brother in the stroller. And when she arrives, Susie gives me another hug. I thought, well, that's sweet of you. I hugged her back. But she wouldn't let go. She stood there in a full clinch. And Mom looked at me, and I looked at her, and Mom says, "All right, Susie, we got to get going." And she doesn't say anything. She goes, "Susie, come on, let him go. We got to get going." Still in the full clinch, she turns to her mom and says, "No, I don't want to go. I want to go with him." And that was about as awkward of a situation I'd ever had in my life. She had decided, this little girl decided that she didn't want to go home. Going home was not beneficial to her anymore. She wanted to be with me. And I explained to her the best I could without bursting into tears that, I'll see you at school next week, because it was a Friday night program. "I'll see you Monday. Yeah, we'll have fun on Monday. I want you to have a really good weekend, okay?" And eventually I was able to gently pry her away to go back home with Mom. And they went off. And, the kid's in tears at this point. I drove home in tears. That was an emotional drain like I had never experienced before. And I'm a child who's a product of abuse. And that hit me hard. It took me a long time to accept, again, what impact means, what power we have in the classroom as staff members, as teachers, as assistants, and everything in between. I was having an effect on that girl's life. It was actually getting in the way of her home life. Thankfully, the mom was not mad at me. I think she understood that I represent something that's missing in this child's life. And I think she appreciated it in a certain unusual way. Because when she's at the school, little Susie, she knew, Mom knew that there was someone there who cared about her, who treated her like, every other kid, in the sense of, look, you don't have a problem. I'm going to make you remember you have a problem, but hey, no matter what you bring, I still care about you. Leave your baggage here. I'll carry it for you. And I think the mom was sharp enough to make that connection. And I appreciated that. Because I did care about Susie quite a bit. And as time went on, as school was running out, the emails would, still be as frequent as ever. At the end of school, goodbyes were tough, of course. But I still kept in touch with the mom. I kept writing to see how Susie was doing. I'd get pictures in response. Maybe they had done something and she wanted to tell me about it. And it was just really nice. I liked that experience. And then the email stopped. The next school season came, and Susie was nowhere to be found. Just out of nowhere, I wrote a letter to Mom saying, hey, just checking in with you, see how you and Susie were doing. And she writes me back saying that they were no longer in Fort Wayne. They had moved to Indianapolis. She had met someone, seemingly a nice enough guy, who was willing to take in not only her, but her 2 kids. Now, keep in mind, there's baggage across the board. So this guy must be a saint. Just an absolute saint. And I wrote back saying, hey, that's great. I'm happy for you. Give Susie my best. Take care. A few months passed. I get an email out of the blue. Hey, guess what? We're coming back to Fort Wayne. We're not going to stay in Indianapolis. It didn't work out. But I need your help. Oh. So I read that, thought, okay, I'm happy to help. What she needed was a place to stay. She couldn't find a good apartment for herself and her 2 kids, noting that she didn't have this guy with her anymore. So I looked around the area that she wanted to live in. I found a few apartments, got the prices and monthly rent and all that stuff. And I said, hey, this is probably the best for you, given your situation. I can give them a call if you want to set up an appointment to talk with the management. I didn't get a response. Nothing at all. No, sure, yeah, I'll do that. That'd be fine. That's great. Just nothing at all. Just radio silence. And I thought, well, you're probably busy. I'll let it go. Weeks went by, nothing. A month went by, nothing. Eventually I accepted that something went wrong, and that was it. I don't know what it was. I don't think there's anything I said. I've been nothing but a swell guy, someone to help out. But it just stopped. I had thought to write her back, just to say, hey, I hope you're doing okay. Hope you're all fine. but out of fear of, perhaps reaching that point where I am getting too close, I pulled back and said, you know what? You know where I am if you need me. But I never heard from her again. I like to think that things are okay, that she found her way, and they're all doing wonderfully. But I don't know. There was a lot of baggage there. Sometimes it's hard to unload that stuff and give yourself a really good chance at redemption. I think about them a lot. I'm a very sentimental person. Matters of children, matters of families in that sense, it gets to me. I feel deeply when these things occur, especially when I'm tied in them in one way or another, because I go into problem-solving mode and I want to give what I can to get this baggage away, to free someone of that so they can live relatively free lives. It's the whole idea of neurotic behavior. If you don't purge yourself of your pains, you don't live a real life. You just kind of submerge your pains in the deepest recesses of your psyche and try to drown it out with materials and fun experiences, and in some cases dependency and addiction. I don't know if you can see it back there. I'm sure you can't, but there's a deer hopping around back there. I'm not going to bother zooming. It's not going to help anyways. Don't want to get too close, you might say. So we're at about an hour. Wasn't planning on getting too deep into the weeds, but I'm glad you know. This is kind of where I come from with this. And this isn't really the only story I have about kids I get close to and feel for and understand the history and the living situations of. And I feel I want to go into that mode of being a savior, maybe even a hero. Have a good remainder of your day. Take care of yourself. Bye.